Today is Monday, the 18th of May 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. So, we have the model in front of us. Again, this week, I want to make the advisory board operating system very, very practical. So, today we're going to do an overview of the four quadrants of the operating system and how an advisory board applies in this case. Let me put this in this way. An advisory board often get described in vague language, and I heard that before. Like people talk about the wise counsel, committees, outside perspectives, the challengers, governance, and support. And these are very useful because actually start to give you the amount of things that people think like what an advisory do, right? So an advisory board particularly. Now, not many mention that it's an operating system because actually have not been designed as an operating system. Pretty much is a scramble many times. So where is the problem here? If you're a founder, for example, with 50 or more employees and 10 million pounds or euros or dollars in revenues, and a business still dependent on your judgment, you don't need a vague language or for support or a committee. You need an operating rhythm. Yeah, so the times to vague language is over. So you have to manage things in a very, very strategic way. So, and you may say, well, we are not a company. We can do either way. So you are less than 50 employees and 10 million pound revenue, or the other way around. We are much larger than that. Listen up, because these are business principles. This applies to any organization. If you are not there yet, you will come there at one point, and you can shorten that path. If you are over that threshold already, this is even more relevant to you because you will face many of these things, and probably here you're going to get a few golden nuggets into how to handle things afterwards. So let's go into the model. So what happens is that you need right people in the right room. So looking at the right evidence, asking the right questions, and then creating clear actions. So that's why I want to do an overview today, and we're going to develop more specifically all these quadrants during the week. So the model had 4 stages. I'm going to explain how it works. So the first is on top, which is commercial acceleration, which is about scaling. And the scaling is not the same as growth because a lot of confusion. People think that it's the same thing. It is not. I'm sorry. But scaling is increasing of revenues when your cost continues at the same level or very close to the same operating costs, right? So you increase revenues, but the costs are pretty much steady. In the second quadrant on the right, we're talking about growth and capital, which is about to be predictable. And here is the interesting thing. So predictability in terms of growing is the difference between scaling. Because when you're growing, you need capital to invest because your operating expenses, your structure, your operational capacities are changing, right? So that's why you need capital when you grow. So as your revenues increases, your cost increases, right? So I'm saying that it goes in parallel, but it's not exactly that. But you see the difference because scaling, revenues increases, cost maintains the same place. But when you're growing, you increase your cost, your operation costs too, hopefully at a profit, but that's another story. So that distinction, if you don't have that distinction from the get-go when you're talking about scaling or growing, then you probably need an advisory board that can make that or help you to put that distinction in paper when you're looking for capital from your shareholder, investors, banks, line of credit, whatever it is the case. And the third quadrant on the bottom of the model or at the base of the model, we have the controls and resilience, which is about the systems. And systems is not necessarily software. So many people think, oh, system, IT. No, it's different. It's the workflows, it's the cadence, it's the rhythm of the things that you do, your operating systems or procedures, your intellectual properties, your assets, right? The other thing actually people confuse here, and I want to make a little comment is resilience. Resilience is not just really how strong we are, it's how predictable you are in terms of your operation costs, in unforeseen circumstances, how you manage your risk, and how your finances are, your cash flows and finances are solid in terms of what is happening next, or the eventualities that the things that you're predicting are not happening, how you manage those risks. So that's resilience. And that's a full chapter we're going to develop this week too. And the fourth quadrant on the left is your transformation and reinvention, which is your edge. What is coming next? How you can become relevant for the future of your company in terms of your customer, your suppliers, your distributors, etc., etc. So as you can see, around those four stages sit the practical assets of the business: so your brand, your people, your partnerships, your revenues, your assets, meaning physical, intangible, governance, risk and compliance, performance, and your strategies. And that is where an operating system for an advisory board. So if you don't have all these things at the same time every single day, if you don't have a view of what's going on with all these things at the same time every single day, you probably run into many, many challenges, because the challenges, you cannot document anything or a part of them, and is a big issue when you start to grow and get bigger. So let's take a look at three problems with this. Problem number one, you as a founder are still the hidden operating system. I can assure you that all these things with different tags and name, probably your own coding, exist in your mind, but nowhere is written. Nowhere is written. So you might have a leadership team. You might have reporting packs. You might have senior people with impressive titles, right? And careers and experience, expertise, education, etc., etc. Yet, when a sales deal gets stuck, you are pulled in. When a pricing call feels risky, you are the ultimate decision maker. When a client escalates to a point that actually is getting dangerous, you are the person calming things down and repairing those bridges, right? When the team disagrees, everyone waits to see what you think. And that feels normal, because actually this is the rhythm of the things that happens for the past years, until it becomes pretty much dangerous, because the business is not run through a system. It's run on one person judgment, memory, energy, which, by the way, is just you, right? The second problem is that growth creates more noise, not more freedom. When I think growth creates more noise, remember that actually operation and increases of revenues goes together. So you need more capital, you need more activity. So that movement doesn't mean that you actually are producing results. So more revenue should create more options. Yet many founders or experience the opposite. More clients are creating more expectations. You have to be everywhere at the same time. More employees create more management drag, because you have to onboard people, bring them up to speed. They start to be productive, etc., etc. That drag might take months. More opportunities create more half-made decisions, right? Because I'm going to go to this point in a second. So, and more meetings create less clarity too, because actually you cannot be, and in terms of a half-made decision and more meetings, you cannot be at the same time anymore for three or four different things. There's a famous phrase that says that I think that was famous 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think that is not relevant anymore. It's a better question to ask now. But the question was, will your business continue increase revenue if you take 30 days holidays and you completely disappear? So I don't think that question is relevant anymore. It was a good challenging question 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Today, a better question is exactly this: have made decisions, less clarity. You know why? Because you are the only person that make all these decisions, all these judgments, your final call, etc., etc. There's not a flow of processes and systems that make and replace that judgment, decision making, memory, etc., etc. Right? So it's not if your business will survive the next 30 days if you're not there. Is how your business is surviving today when you have to make very, very tough calls because you cannot be in two places at the same time, right? And so which rabbit are you going to catch? That's a big question. So it can feel as if the business is growing, but you as a founder, you have less room to think. And that thinking space is shrinking year on year on year as the business is growing, growing, and growing, because you still being the one person, being the bottleneck of the conduit of the gate of everything when the things are getting tricky. So this is the unpleasant part of it. You build the business to create enterprise value, but the next layer of growth is starting to consume the persons you created, right? And there's a third problem. Arrive too late, or too loosey, or too expensive. And this problem is serious because many founders like yourself wait until the pressure is obvious before seeking outside help. And the options feel very bold, really. Hire one executive and hope they cover the gap. So, but guess what? They are not you. They are not you. So they don't think the same thing that you think. They don't operate the same way that you operate. They come with different experiences than yours. They haven't built a company. They haven't took the risk that you took to be where you are today. They've been very well skilled, but always in the lower risk of the equation, which is under a salary or a bonus. They haven't risked everything to build a company where you build it. So the other option is to bring a big consulting firm and pay for a heavy project. And guess what happened there? Probably you've been there before. They make surveys, they go and inquire, they ask you for a lot of documentation things. 3 months later, they come with a wonderful PowerPoint, 60 pages or 100 pages. They put you in a meeting room, a fancy one, and they go through all these things and they say, there you are, that's your company, and this is our suggestions. What action points you get out of that? Beside that you paid a big check for that. They told you already the things that you already know in a fancy spreadsheet, but or on a fancy PowerPoint. But actually, exactly what they're going to do with that, it feels like a very, very, very disappointing at that point. Or you have the third option that you ask informal advice to people or that things actually at the end you have to filter yourself. It applies, doesn't apply, it's coming from this person, it doesn't coming from this person. So none of these routes are wrong, by the way. The issue is where they fit, if they fit with you and your organization or not. So growing a private company or a public listed company often needs specialist judgment faster than hiring one executive, with a lower overhead than big consulting, and without locking itself or yourself into one permanent talent bed, right? So in other words, your business as a high performance vehicle, put it that way, with you as a founder still holding the steering wheel, you're checking the engine, you reading the map, you or the Google map, whatever is the case, judging the weather and calming the passengers. So you have to do everything and for everywhere and everybody at the same time. So what is it at the point that you have to go into high stake situations? You're still becoming the person that everybody have to come to. So for a while, as you're growing, that works. But at scale, it becomes the risk, because actually you cannot increase things having the same things that you've done in the past, because it has a different dynamic, a different rhythm, different cadence, right? So as a board advisor, what I propose is the following for your consideration. The first thing is set up an advisory board, and don't treat it as a meeting that you have to do every month or every quarter or every 6 months. Treat it as an operating system. And here I'm going to give you what you have to put together. That means that each board cycle has an input and a session and an output, right? So input, session, output. The input is evidence. So the current numbers, decisions, risks, open questions, blocked projects, and your concerns as a founder. In terms of the session, is a challenge. And the challenge is not to challenge you, right? It's just to understand what's going on and question why or what is happening here and how we arrive to these points. It's not a theater. It's not something just to challenge you as in a fight. It's just to bring all this cognitive thinking, diversity of thinking into one place and say, look at this, how we're going to look into this. So it's not a theater, not a polite tour of the management pack. It's a proper commercial, financial, operational, strategic challenge from people who have seen the patterns before. And this is very important. The output now is an action tracker. Who owns what, by when, which what evidence they need to provide as progress, right? So you have your input, challenge, and outputs. The second thing I would suggest is match your board talent to the stage your business is in. So you don't need to go and hire a specialist team and make a static board. That is a mistake too. For scaling, you need the people who understand sales, marketing, partnership, leadership, and organizational design. For predictability, which is a quadrant on the right, you need finance experts, pricing, capital, fundraisers. Actually, they've done this before, asset quality and margin discipline, right? In the quadrant of the base, which is a system, you need people that understand risk, audit, governance, processes, cybersecurity, controls, resilience, right? On the far left, for the age, for your transformation, for your innovation, you need people that understand strategy, innovation, market shift, brand relevance, and transformation, right? So this is how you start to put together the board. You can put as 4 elements or 4 board members with different skills that actually hit all these things. You see how easy it is to bring real talent that really brings you to the next level, having all these visuals of how they operate the company in a way that actually you have the full vision of the company in one place, and they have a different ways to see the things. And each one, guess what, is helping each other to achieve the goals that you're looking for. So you set the milestones. I want to achieve this. This is my process. And then these teams start to get you what is the thinking, the processes, and the system that you need to employ to get there. And the third thing I want to mention is that this board should be modular, meaning that actually here is where the advisory board operating system differs from hiring one expensive or permanent executive. You don't need every advisory forever, right? So I mentioned milestones. You need a right blend for the next 6 months. And then you assess which is the right blend for the following 6 months once you achieve those outputs that we mentioned earlier. So then you review the business, the assets, the next constraints, and swap members where the work has changed. That avoids the talent locked in, that avoids the group thinking, that avoids getting a static thinking about the business. So it's quite dynamic, new people, but the talents that actually help you to achieve the next stage of your company. It also keeps the board relevant, so very, very dynamic. So people doesn't sleep on their feet, as they say, because they know that if they don't produce the result they're looking for every 6 months, there might be another round of people that would come in, and if they don't do it the right thing, probably they are going to be challenged themselves as the effectiveness that they have to produce as advisors, right? So, by the way, this is something that the Financial Reporting Council Authority in the UK already implemented for larger organizations, and I think it's brilliant. So people say, oh, we have more controls. No, it's not that you have more controls as an advisor. I'm talking about the board now. You have to be and provide evidence of effectiveness. So also for you now as a founder, you have certain capacity or very good capacities now to say, listen, if we don't have evidence of effectiveness of your contribution, your value to my organization in 6 months' time, thank you very much. This is the end of our relationship. And it sounds harsh and bold, but there is a responsibility from everybody. You as a founder to bring your company to the next level, the advisory board to make sure that it helps and brings value, connections, and capacity to help you to get there. So what you gain working with me? 3 things: business outcomes, differentiators, and risk reductions. In terms of outcomes or business outcomes, You gain a sharper operating rhythm around you, the founder, right? Not around the board, but around you. The business stops relying on private conversations, corridor decisions, and your instinct, which is very good to bring you up to this point. And now, what is next? That's a big question. You have a board pack, an advisory session, and a decision log, and a 30-day action tracker. So you don't lose and you have evidence of efficiencies, as I mentioned earlier. So the result is clear priorities, faster implementation, and less drift. And drift is something that you see in the companies many, many times. They are going here, there, and then the original purpose start to go into where, because you are not clear anymore. It's a drift. In terms of differentiators, I put together an international advisory board tailored to your current growth stage, your milestones. It's faster to implement than hiring one executive. It has a lower overhead than a big consulting firm, and there is no talent locked in. Members are swappable every 6 months, so the board changes as the constraints changes. And how I help you to reduce risk? I reduce the risk with the founder dependency, with your dependency. You reduce over reliance on one leadership profile, and now you have a capacity to say, oh, right, I can be in several places at the same time because now we have a system, a process to do that. So the dependencies on you start to get less and less and less, so you have more time to breathe, mentally space, more room to operate, etc., etc. So you reduce the risk of paying for a large advisory or consulting structure too, that does not align with the private company decision-making cycle, because private companies are more agile than publicly listed companies. And you reduce the risk of advice staying theoretical, like we mentioned, the large PowerPoints or large presentations with really no outcomes. And well, they have outcomes, but actually that's another stage of paying another little fortune for that. The point is not to advise for its own sake. The point is a better movement of the organization towards results. Now, let's get practical. One action you can take home today, and it's doable in 30 minutes or less. Draw a 4-box map on one page representing this model. Yeah, box 1, scale, predictability, systems, and edge. Under each box, write the biggest decision your business had avoided in the last 90 days. The biggest decision your business has avoided in the last 90 days, right? So don't overthink it. You already know them. So for scale, it might be a role change, a partner strategy, a sales model, or a brand issue. For predictability, it might be pricing or cash and margin or capital allocation. For the systems, could be anything like approval rights, risk ownership, cybersecurity, audits, or performing report. And the last one for your edge, your transformation, your next stage. It might be AI. AI today is getting very hot for some bad reasons and for some good reasons. So what decision you avoid in the last 90 days related to AI? Is a market repositioning, it could be another thing, the product renewal could be another thing, or the new customer acquisition could be another thing, who knows? But with these, your box contains the decisions that will create the most enterprise value if it were solved in 90 days ago, right? So now with this view, what is going to solve, or where you had to put your attention for in the next 90 days to give more enterprise value. But now you have a view. You can understand better how your company can have a view in all these 4 areas. So this is, in my opinion, the first advisory board agenda that you had to put together, right? So let's pause here for today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow I'll move into stage 1. I go deeper into commercial acceleration. This was just an overview. And we will look into the founder who has built a strong business, but is still pulled into every sales, every approval, and every key decision, and how to address that. Now, if you're a company, you're a founder, or executive team, or a non-executive director, and you want to understand how all this works, because you understand and you see that there are all these bottlenecks in your organization, let's have a 30-minute chat and allow me to understand where you are coming from, where are you today and where you want to be in your organization, so I can understand how an international advisory board can make this possible for you in the coming 6 months, giving your access to international advisors with a far faster implementation than hiring a single executive, lower overhead, and the big consulting firms are putting pressure into companies with no talent locked in and swappable members every 6 months. Let's reconvene tomorrow then. Have a great day.